Welcome to Preps Plus Extra, the Journal Sentinel's online high school sports show, where each week we'll obviously talk about what's the big topics that are going on in high school sports. How you doing? I'm Mark Stewart, prep editor of the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. Joining me again, JR Radcliff, sports editor, Now Newspapers. How you doing?
I'm doing great. We're at it. We're there. We've got brackets. We're ready for playoff basketball. Exciting time of year.
Yes, and we have some conference champions. Earlier this week, a number, we could have called this, I think we referred to it as Super Tuesday. Tuesday, where this past Tuesday we had conference champions crowned, or close to being crowned in some cases, in the Greater Metro, Classic 8, City Conference, Wisconsin Little 10. A big night all around. I guess let's start off in your neck of the woods. Classic matchup, Sussex Hamilton, Brookfield Central, double overtime.
Yeah, it sounds like this was just a tremendous game to be at, as you would expect. The atmosphere was electric. One thing that Central did very well, and they run that kind of a 1-3-1 zone that a few teams in that conference run, but it's very effective, and it's been kind of their calling card. They were really able, with their best defensive players, to shut down Sussex Hamilton star Brady Ellingson. They held him to 14 points, which is, something in just a regular game, let alone with two additional, with overtimes. Right. Basically, that's 5 quarters. And so they really were able to limit his output. And he had a couple shots, one that went halfway down at the end of the first overtime and rattled out. So Hamilton really was close, on the cusp of winning that game, and that would have given them a season sweep. They would have basically, they would have had a share of the Greater Metro title, and or actually that would have basically clinched it for them outright. So right. now they're back into a share for the title. Still a good situation to be in for Hamilton. For Brookfield Central, they get a little bit of new life. They lost by 11 to Hamilton the first time around, and we know Central's a good team. They've been playing some very high-level opponents all year long. They've got one hiccup against Waukesha North, but for the most part, their losses are totally understandable. They have a lot of good wins, so we know that's a very good team. They've got a tough playoff road ahead, though, with some of the city schools in there.
Right, and speaking of city schools, Milwaukee King took a huge step in gaining a share of what would be their second straight conference title. They beat Milwaukee Hamilton on the road, and what impressed me about the win, a couple of things. I guess you talk about one-star players being contained, and Kevon Looney, Hamilton's standout junior forward. He finished with 14 points. He's averaging at least maybe 25, something like that. So they did a nice job with him. But even more impressive, King didn't play without his best player, Austin Mitchell Malone, who was a second-team All-Area guy, and he got some All-State mention last year. He's been out for the last couple of weeks with a shoulder injury. Mm-hmm. So I was at Wisconsin Lutheran, but when I saw the score, my initial thought was that he was back and he had a role in the victory. So for King to get that win was without him on the floor, just shows you the collection of depth they have with that team.
Yeah, Milwaukee King's they will have to face Milwaukee Vincent in the sectional semifinal just to get to the final where they could see Hamilton again. So that's going to be a meat grinder for King and for Vincent that they would meet before the sectional final and end up with Hamilton in the final, most possibly. Right.
And then as far as other big games on earlier this week, Wisconsin Lutheran pretty much is going to win the Wisconsin Little 10 outright. They had a strong second quarter. I was able to watch that game, and they put away Slinger pretty well. I think they won by 12. And then in the Classic 8, Arrowhead. I know you guys are probably tired of hearing about Arrowhead, but hey, they keep winning. They did it again. They won the Classic 8, beat Mukwonago, and we talked about Mukwonago last week too.
And that game was supposedly very, very good all the way through. What happened was Arrowhead, they got a senior guard by the name of Kyle Karen, and he was really the only major contributor on that team who wasn't on the football team. So at the beginning of the year, when all those football guys were coming off the state championship and they were a little slow to get going, they were still winning games, but Karen was there. He's a basketball first guy. He was in the gym. He really led them through the first part of the year. Hit a little bit of a lull, kind of came back, but on Tuesday night, he was really struggling. He was out of the game in crunch time, and the assistant coaches talked Arrowhead coach Craig Haase into putting him back in the game. He goes on a huge spurt at the end of the game, and Arrowhead ends up winning fairly comfortably. It was, I think, a 5-point spread, 56-51, with Mukwonago hitting a three-pointer at the buzzer. So, Kyle Karen steps up big, has a huge game, and Arrowhead essentially, they have a share and are really just one win away from being outright conference champs.
Right. So congratulations to all those teams. One team that's had their conference championship wrapped up for at least a week and a half at this point is Germantown. We caught up with the Warhawks after they beat Wisconsin Lutheran last week.
I hope that our peak is yet to come. Sometimes they surprise me and play really well in spurts. and sometimes they surprise me and don't play very well at times. But our goal is to have every day better than the one before, and hopefully our best is yet to come.
Wisconsin Luther was a great intensity team. They played real hard, and we just came out here and matched the intensity.
Well, JR, you touched on the brackets before, and I guess let's start at the top with Germantown. No surprise, they got a #1 seed. What do you see in that whole sectional?
Yeah, it's certainly a talented one. Sussex Hamilton being the 2 seed, they had 1 loss going into their battle with Brookfield Central on Tuesday night. Now they're down to 2 losses, but still a very good program. Hamilton and Arrowhead, who's the 3 seed, had a classic matchup in the playoffs last year. It ended on a last-second shot. Brady Ellingson scored 31 points in that game, hit some ridiculous 3-pointers, and then he was the decoy on the last play. They got a layup underneath the basket at the buzzer, stunned Arrowhead in Arrowhead's own gym. That's going to be a big-time rematch if that comes to pass at 2-3, and that battle the winner of that game would then face Germantown in the sectional semifinal. I don't think it's a secret that Germantown is clearly the team to beat overall in the state in the Division I field. It's going to be a real uphill battle. No matter how strong Sussex Hamilton or Arrowhead is, it's going to be a huge uphill battle to catch Germantown. I mean, Arrowhead's a very good team, we know, and they lost by more than 50 to Germantown earlier this year at one of the holiday tournaments. So it's going to be tough, but anything can happen in the playoffs. I know that gets said every year. It really is true, and sometimes you just don't see it coming.
Right. That's true. And sometimes being the favorite isn't. Puts you out there and makes you a target. So it'll be interesting to see if Germantown can, really keep this undefeated, go undefeated back to back. That's what we're looking at right now. So it's, and in one of the other Division I sectionals, one of the better area sectionals, you got Milwaukee Vincent and Milwaukee King, Brookfield Central in one half of the bracket. That's going to be interesting to see how that unfolds. I think, as you noted before, you got King and Brookfield Central probably headed for a regional
semifinal, yeah.
The regional, yeah,
sectional semifinal.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't even know how they word it because you've got the sectionals are divided in half essentially.
Right. But they would potentially meet relatively early, and then the winner of that game is probably going to ultimately end up facing Vincent in the sectional semifinal. On the other end of the bracket, you got Milwaukee Hamilton, a team that probably isn't going to win a share of the city conference title, but has a pretty good shot, I think, of getting to the sectional final. But they've got Racine Case up in that part of the bracket, I believe. So it'll be interesting to see how that one unfolds. But from what I've seen, you'd probably have to give Hamilton the edge there.
Yeah, and in Division II, you've got a potential matchup between Wisconsin Lutheran and Milwaukee Washington. Washington, they were right there competing for the City Conference Championship themselves. They're a tremendous team, and Wisco's the 1 seed, Washington the 2. If that comes to pass at the end of that sectional road, that's going to be a really engaging matchup, and the winner of that game could then face another area team, possibly New Berlin Eisenhower, the top seed on that half of the bracket, possibly a Catholic Memorial or a Pewaukee. That'd be more of an upstart story, but certainly some big-time matchups with Milwaukee school teams involved.
Right, yeah, and it's the way the seedings work. My initial thought was when I thought of Wisco and Milwaukee, Washington, I wondered if Washington would get the nod as the #1 seed just because they were on pace to win the city at that time, and it looks like they're gonna at least get a share of the conference title. And I wonder how much weight that would carry. But Wisconsin Lutherans had I think they probably had a better overall season, whereas Washington's kind of come on a little later. And to be honest, once by the time they meet, the seedings aren't going to matter because it's going to be at a neutral site anyway. So yeah, it should make for a very interesting tournament season as we move forward here. But that's going to wrap it up for another edition of Preps Plus Extra. For more Preps Plus action, you can watch me and Lance Allen every Sunday night on today's TMJ4. Till next time, take care.